I am so excited to sit down with you this morning, Joshua, and learn a little bit more about the Kink Collective and all the amazing work you are doing for your community up in New York. So let's go ahead and jump in. First, tell me a little bit about yourself and your business.
Thank you, Sally. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate the opportunity. My name is Joshua. I'm co-founder of the Kink Collective. And what we do is we help people reframe their relationship with sexuality, intimacy, and relationships and how they develop relationships. We've been doing this now for about 8 years, and it stemmed off of my having done professional domination for 15 years, maybe about 6 or 7 years prior to uh, the Kink Collective being co-founded. In that time, though, I've gone down different avenues of embodiment and wellness and realignment with the body, and cannabis as well as other plant-based medicines have come into my wheelhouse around helping people reconnect with their body and vulnerability and safety, as well as trying to reframe the public's view on what cannabis is versus what we were told it is. Um, as I've been preparing for this call, I remembered there was a program that I co-created with a partner of ours called Canna Bliss, where it was around cannabis use and sensory and stimulation and reconnecting with the body. So I'm really glad to be here and helping people reframe or redevelop a relationship with cannabis in a healthier way that isn't projected onto us with false narratives or misinformation.
I love that. So let's expand a little bit on the cannabis stuff. You mentioned you're helping people reframe how they view cannabis. What is your perspective on how people have been viewing cannabis and the direction that we want to move in with it?
Well, for myself included, like I was born in 78. So I was around during the Just Say No Drugs campaign and all the public service announcements that was on TV. I've got something you've got to try. Pot, marijuana. I actually went to school with that kid. His name is Jake. Uh, I went to a performing arts school here in the city, and he was there with his brother, with his twin brother, and he was the drug dealer from the commercials. Kind of funny. Um, but there was always this fear mongering around what marijuana is and how detrimental it can be to someone's life. And it wasn't until my 30s that I started smoking and building a relationship with cannabis. And this is well before it became legal here in New York City or New York State. But it was always presented as something dangerous and something that would put your life into a spiral if you ever got reefer madness, right? It's like it was really kind of funny. Uh, I started smoking during a more difficult time in my life, where authenticity and expectations were rubbing up against each other really hard. Um, and when I got introduced to it and I smoked it for the first time, I was like, wait a second. I'm not falling into hell. The devil's not pulling me down. What's going on here with this devil's lettuce? And and it really changed my relationship with alcohol, with other substances, and how and why perhaps a plant has been vilified. Um, so getting it into the work that I do now, what I've noticed is that it helps people lower their walls of, I don't want to say inhibition, but the fear of being seen, right? And the conversations that we can dive into when a person lowers the threshold of defense, almost I would call it. It really opens the avenues to communicate on a much deeper level.
Yeah, I completely agree. I feel like that has been my experience with cannabis as well. There are those moments when it just helps you kind of set aside the stress or the worry and just be yourself and open up a little more. And I think that as a collective society, we should start to appreciate that more rather than view it as reefer madness. I think we're getting
Yeah,
there.
yeah. Yeah, it's funny because like, my parents, when New York legalized it, I think that was Cuomo's way of trying to redirect all the heat coming from COVID, because it almost became legal overnight in New York State, which was crazy. And then it happened, and I remember going over to a friend's house, and her and I just went outside to light up because we could. And it was such a drastic shift in what was acceptable legally. And it was like, well, if this happens now, what can we do with this? Because I've seen what it does behind closed doors. Uh, when, for example, when I had my appendix removed, um, right when COVID kicked off, before the state changed the laws around it, and they gave me narcotics. I want to say it was Oxy for the recovery, and it was hell on my body. It was crazy. I mean, I was in here. I had all the shades drawn, the lights were down. I was making deals with God, like, please take this pain away from me. And what I realized is I hadn't had my supply of cannabis re-upped. I hadn't gotten any more since COVID introduced all these restrictions. And thankfully, I was able to get my hands on some. And what I noticed immediately after smoking, within 60 seconds, I went from being incapacitated to actually being able to get up and walk around and have an appetite and be not even productive, but just be human, because the medicine had me bedbound for days. It was one of the worst experiences I've ever had. I was literally asking God for help because I didn't know how I was going to work through this pain that I was experiencing post surgery. And when I smoked and the pain dissipated in less than a minute, I was blown away, because up until then I was an advocate, but immediately after that I became a proponent, because it was like these heavy narcotics that not only did they want me to go onto them to manage the pain, but then I was also going to have to wean off of them at the back end. And it's like, what kind of craziness is that? No wonder addiction happens to these pain meds the way that they
Well,
do, because it's almost like manufactured that way, one would say, right?
I was about to say, it sounds like you're talking about a drug, not a medicine, when we talk about the pills, and the plants are the true medicine.
Yes, yes, I really appreciate that, the difference between the drugs and medicine. Yeah, I resonate with that deeply. Yes.
Yeah. I think many people do, and I know, we both know that cannabis is a medicine and should be treated as such, and hopefully, we will see more of that in our lifetime. Oh,
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I think the evidence is it's too big on the way it can help people
yeah.
medicinally, that it can't be ignored. I think we're seeing that with the rollback on the federal level, and I think as time progresses, all the other states will catch up to it.
Yeah.
It's just I can also understand the pharmaceutical companies not wanting people to be able to grow their own medicine in their backyards, right? But we won't talk about that.
I was gonna say, we could go on a long tangent there. Okay, I would love to hear a little bit about what inspired you to start your business.
So the King Collective, that as we built that, the idea was to help people step into authenticity. Uh, the introduction to cannabis into some of these steps is to help people connect deeper with their partners, who they're with, or depending on if we're doing discussion groups. Like, we're going to be starting an event called the Cipher, and I'm doing that with another friend of mine who he's also an advocate and proponent for cannabis and the medicinal and social uses of it, and reframing how society is receiving it and accepting it as a communal ritualistic substance to smoke, just like smoking circles, where we can get together and really dive into who we are at our core through communication and conversation. what I've noticed is through the avenue of kink, and when people come into their journey around sex and sexuality, there's an innate level of permission and almost expectation in conversation to have freedom in what we're sharing, because the idea is liberation of self. So to be able to create containers where we can have these deep conversations around our relationship with identity and faith and culture and society, it's like it's a way to support and to help folks who have a hard time accessing these parts of themselves in conversation, to help ease some of that stress away so that they can participate in these deep conversations as well.
That's beautiful. And would you say that's the main way that you incorporate plant medicine into the work you do with the Kink Collective?
So yes, yes. Depending on what the event is, right? We had an event we created called Cannabis that was built for couples to come in and to experience their bodies in heightened sensations through the use of cannabis, moderated, where we're not going into the deeper ends of altered states, so that they're still present, they're still connected with each other in a way that's supervised, that we can walk with them through these experiences. The discussion groups that are an offshoot off of Kink Collective and the more intimate settings, the offshoot, the cipher, is to help build community for deep diving folks and folks who are looking to develop deeper emotional maturity and community around that.
So I know you've mentioned the community circles and these kind of offshoot conversations. Can you expand on the community circles and the kind of work you do there?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started doing men's work about 3 years ago, and I work with an organization called All Kings, where we help men who were formerly incarcerated or impacted by the justice system reframe their relationship with masculinity and essentially become contributing members to society in a way that wasn't framed or structured for us in the past. Working with All Kings and seeing the impact that they had on a social level, with the intention being reflection and introspection. It's like, how can we take the community circles that we've done in kink, the permissions that we've established in the containers we created, the social impact that that's happening to adults who have no space to share and to converse and to have just public discourse. How do we take the capacity and the lessons we've learned in these and make it into an intentional space where everyone's coming in with the same understanding, the same, not the same intention personally, but on a social level? And how do we build community through that lens, that it's not just through one demographic of person, but folks from all walks of life can participate in these conversations because they're meaningful on the level of topic. For example, we talk about love, we talk about faith, we talk about social responsibilities, we talk about gender roles and gender norms, we talk about grief and human emotions, things of that nature, to get a person in touch with who they are when they show up.
I was going to ask you, what have you found to be the best way to build community? Or another thing that's on my mind is, how do you help people feel safe in these spaces and feel supported when you bring together people from different backgrounds?
So it's all about structure. It's all about structures and agreements, making sure that everyone's coming in under the same guides and guidance. There's also a level of, um, I want to say conformity. That's not the best word, but conformity, meaning coming into one space, having those sets of agreements. It's to make sure that no one is being left behind, that no one gets made to feel invisible, and that everyone has equity in the space, so that everyone can take up space And also, those who take up more space than necessary can dial that back so that those who don't or aren't used to being seen or heard can step up and take their space as well. So it's about creating experiences of essentially equality where every voice matters. And we do that through guidelines and agreements.
What are some of the guidelines and agreements that you work with?
So some of those would be speak from the I,
Mm.
meaning don't generalize, don't say us guys and you guys and you know how it is. Strictly speak from I. It keeps from sounding preachy and like we're trying to diagnose society. Another one would be respect the container. If you need to use the restroom, just go ahead and use the restroom. Come back silently. Be mindful of of how much energy you're putting out there that can detract from the space. Another one would be no crosstalk, no saving. Allow a person to sit in their struggle, trying to find their words, so that they can earn their own self-awareness. The minute I start throwing words at you, takes away your opportunity from discovering your own language around the thoughts and the feelings. A big one for me is put your cell phones away. Be present. Right? There's nothing on your cell phone that's going to be more important than what you're going to possibly hear from someone. And the other cool thing about it is what I love about introducing different demographics into these spaces, white, black, gay, straight, male, female, everything in between, is that the least expected person has a high probability of saying something that you've needed to hear for the last 20 years, but you didn't speak to them because they don't match your orientation or your race or your religion. So it's like, if they don't look like me, then why are we connected? It's like, no, no, no. That's the antithesis of what human connection is, right? It's like if everyone around me sounded the same and agreed with everything I agreed with, there's no growth. So it's like, how do we introduce a neutral space, a space of accountability and encouragement to show up and say what you mean and mean what you say? Because the other part about this is that we're adults and we have to be willing to risk being offended by what someone else may say through their own lived experience. It's like, it doesn't detract, it doesn't negate a person's lived experience because I don't agree with it. And that's one of the harder things that we introduce in our spaces is this is a safe space, meaning you'll hear something that will rub you wrong. And I encourage it. The idea is, how do you process that after? Do you sit down like an adult and talk it through? Or do you throw your hands up and just give up because it makes you uncomfortable? It's like, the biggest lessons I've learned come from discomfort.
Absolutely. And do you find that people are pretty open to both sharing their experience as well as honoring and receiving other people's experiences in these circles?
So when it comes down to how people show up, it has to be led, the example has to be led by the facilitators and by others who are more experienced in these types of spaces. Meaning, I won't ask a question that I'm not willing to answer first. And through that example that's set allows other people to see the depth of vulnerability that they can go. And that's, I've noticed, is significant, that I discovered through domination years and years ago, is I can't ask you what your deepest, darkest fantasies are if I'm not willing to show you my vulnerability too. Because in a lot of these spaces, people are saying things they haven't shared with their therapists or their loved ones. And it's like, to be able to access a person's vulnerability like that is invaluable. And how do we empower them with that process so that they can take it moving forward and create spaces for themselves? So while at the Cypher we have the containers we create, we have the examples we set, the encouragement is, take these feelings and experiences and these formats out of here and take them into your personal life so that you can create connections with the people already in your life. It's like, there doesn't have to be a great reset in order for you to show up how you really are today.
Yeah, absolutely. And remind me, do you incorporate plant medicine in these community circles?
Some of them, yes, only the ones that are specific. Like the Cypher is the one right now, is the one that we do it. The other circles that we host, we don't do. Actually, we don't encourage it at all. We want people to show up without being influenced by any substances, generally speaking. But when it comes to the circles that are built specifically for it, that's where it's encouraged to the person's comfort level, right? Some people, like myself, are avid cannabis users, and sometimes it would take me a little bit more to get to a threshold where I can feel it in my body, versus someone who's brand new, where a 5 milligram gummy would probably do the trick, right? But the whole point of it is to just soften a little bit of the edges
Mhm.
when we go into the conversations or the movement experiences, to let the shoulders drop just a little bit, to let the tension out of the hips just enough so that you can sit a little more comfortably.
Yeah, and cannabis is beautiful at accomplishing that.
Yeah, yeah, it is. Yes, it is.
All right, the last question I have for you is if someone is completely new to plant medicine, do you have any recommendations for how to begin working with them as plant medicines?
So when it comes to cannabis, I'd say don't start with gummies because they can be so deceiving, right? They can be so
Yeah.
deceiving, and they last a lot longer in the body than if you took a puff off of a flower, right? So I I would say start with a joint, maybe go to a local dispensary, preferably go to a dispensary and get a pre-roll, something small, something on the lighter end of THC, and just light it and take a couple hits, maybe 2 hits, and not, but just a, and then fill up the rest with oxygen, with air, right? Just a little, and then fill it up with air and just see what happens in your body, and don't rush it. And every strain is going to treat you differently, and be respectful to the medicine, be respectful to the plant, because there is overindulgence. And
Mhm.
like anything else, too much of anything is not good. Uh, so that's what I would suggest. And I would say do it with someone you feel safe with, because if you need grounding, you have someone there that can ground you, someone who you can talk with, someone who can monitor with you, and pace yourself. There's no race, and there's no too late to start either, right? It's like I started in my 30s because of just where I was. Some folks start much younger, and I personally don't believe in substances at a younger age than legally required, only because I've seen what it can do on the other side of it when people become reliant on it and they make it a priority versus something supportive of their life.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is a an important message for people to hear and understand, and it's honestly been part of my journey with cannabis as well, understanding, what a little bit is like versus overindulgence and how that does impact me. And like finding that sweet spot, of like just the right amount that you're letting go of the stress, letting the shoulders drop, and you can still be present versus taking it a little too far, which I have definitely done. But it's all, yeah, it's all a learning journey, right? And about understanding yourself as well as your relationship with the plant medicine. And I think it's important for people to go on that journey too if they want to work with something like cannabis. Otherwise, it's harder to appreciate the value that it has.
Yeah, I mean, I've St. Ides. They make the malt liquor 40s that have been so prevalent in the 80s and the 90s, and I don't know if they still are now. But they make a cannabis drink that's 120 milligrams in the size of a Red Bull can. And speaking of overindulging, I was in San Francisco, and I said I had the can. It was delicious. It was like an iced tea flavor. It was raspberry, and it just went down so smooth.
I
But
love it.
80 milligrams, because I split it with a friend of mine. 80 milligrams, I had a straight up psychedelic experience with it.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
yeah, it was out of body. It was really intense. And I don't recommend people doing it if if you have no experience and you don't have anyone sitting there with you and you don't know how you're going to respond to something like this. So just be very careful, read the labels, 5-10 milligrams max if you're starting, max. And with the edibles, give yourself an hour before you check in with how you feel. Because sure enough, what happens is there's a brownie sitting around. Someone's like, "Ooh, this is a good brownie. Oh, it's not kicked in yet, and it's only been 30 minutes. Let me take another one. Let me take another one." And then before you know it, 3 hours later, you're comatose on the sofa. You can't move because you're just so inundated with the experience that you can't move. So just be mindful and be respectful and be intentional with what you're doing. It makes a whole difference.
I cannot tell you how many conversations I've had with different people who've said, I had a bad experience with either cannabis or mushrooms. And I say, well, what did you have? What was the dose? And they go, I don't know. And I'm like, we can't be, we can't be. And then I counter it with, would you take an unmarked pill or a handful of pills if you didn't know what it was? And they always say no. And I say, why are you treating plant medicine that way then?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I completely agree. And I feel like it's our mission to continue to educate people on safe practices so that they can have good informed experiences and not have that negative impression of a plant simply because they were uneducated about what they were consuming.
Yeah, absolutely. And this has been around longer than we can even imagine, right? So it's like just show respect to the plant.
Yes, I could not agree more. Well, Joshua, it was a pleasure to chat with you this morning. I am so glad we could connect. And if anyone's watching this and up in New York, go check out Joshua and the King Collective.
Thank you, Sally. Thank you so much. And I look forward to hearing and seeing how everything expands for you as well over on your side of the country.
Thank you. Always good to connect with people doing the good work for the plants across the country.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you.